Welcome back, everybody. This is Lead with Giants TV. I'm your host, Tal Schnell, and my guest this evening is Karen Martin. This is our second segment. Welcome back, Karen.
Hi, thank you so much. It's nice to be here, Tal.
Great. Liz, thank you so much for joining us as well.
No problem.
All right. Just kind of a quick introduction. Karen Martin is the author of The Outstanding Organization, which is this book right here, and you can get that Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and any bookstore. Wonderful read with a lot of just a little toolbox for the emerging leaders out there. And Karen offers a toolbox that focuses on 4 behaviors, which is clarity, focus, and discipline and engagement. What like for us to start the second segment, which I thought was very interesting because you actually, some of the research you've done, you actually looked outside of the business environment to find those 4 key behaviors, and I really find that interesting, and I want to ask you why.
Well, because they were so lacking in the business environment. So,
Okay.
honestly, when I was searching for outstanding organizations, there are several, and I've mentioned them in the book, like W.L. Gore, Menlo Innovations. I mean, there are several really outstanding organizations in my opinion. But I did find that when you go outside of business, you see more evidence of those behaviors more consistently. So, for example, in sports, in the arts, in music, in even scientific research, you find high degrees very often of clarity, focus, discipline, and engagement. And so when I looked at patterns and saw that, outstanding performers in those areas were so consistently high with those 4 behaviors, and then compared it to what I see in business, I said, this is kind of interesting that, so how do we actually instill clarity, focus, discipline, and engagement in an organization so that they can perform at the high levels that they're capable of? And I hate seeing unfulfilled potential, and so most organizations have, this tremendous potential to perform at much higher levels than they are doing. We just need to get that self-inflicted chaos out of the way.
Yeah, and let's talk about chaos. Why do with all the respect to, I mean, you mentioned that in the book as well. There's leadership programs, there's books, there's all these kind of training materials and things for probably more than any other time. Let's just face it and be honest. But why does it not have an impact on the day-to-day, whether you're a small business or a bigger business or a corporation? It still doesn't have an impact, as you and I were talking about earlier, the discontentment or the happiness, still not there. Why is that?
Yeah, good question. So what I believe is that we skipped ahead and we continue to skip ahead to solutions that don't address the fundamentals. And I love Larry Bird's famous quote from basketball. First master the fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of my my head scratching as I was starting to write this book was, is anyone going to really want to read about something that sounds so much like it's not rocket science? There's
Right.
nothing really new and sexy about clarity, focus, discipline, and engagement.
Yeah.
But they're woefully missing in many organizations. So sexy or not, we have to get that very solid foundation to build a skyscraper on it and have it actually stay up. So I do believe that there's a bit of psychology behind it. I think that so I talk a lot about truth-telling in the book, and truth-telling goes as far as, in the first segment, you mentioned communication, which is a big part of the clarity equation. But the other part of it is there's a lack of truth-telling in terms of organizations being clear and very visual about how they're actually performing. And so visual management and bringing metrics and performance into the forefront so that people can see it and not hide from problems is a big part of it. Making problems visible is another big part of it. And it goes against every inclination, especially in a blame-oriented environment. People want to hide how they're actually performing. And so you have to start with these psychological precepts and build this trust that telling the truth about performance is a good thing, and it's going to be handled in a very professional and positive way. Problems are good.
Yeah, I want to come back to a point there, and let me have also Liz share with her thoughts here into the conversation as well.
Karen, how do you help organizations and leaders develop a picture of what success would look like if they can achieve it?
You start with how the day looks and then go into how the month looks. It's an envisioning exercise. How does the year look? How does it feel? It's interesting about business. In the 80s when I started in corporate, no one wanted to talk about feelings. It was like, no, no, no. We don't talk about feelings. We're human beings. It's nothing but a sea of feelings. And so, to me, defining success is not only in the numbers, which I very much am all about, key performance indicators and numbers, but it's also about how does it feel? Can you actually sleep at night? Can you sleep better than you did? How does it feel during the day? Is it stressful? Is it calm? Are you always fighting fires, or is it just an occasional fire, which outstanding organizations experience? So, envisioning starts with, just feeling it differently, and then putting forth, I'm a grassroots kind of gal. It's like, okay, what are we going to do about it? It's one thing to talk about it. Let's do it. What has to be done to get that to become your new reality?
That's very true, and I want to say, going back to an earlier point, which relates to what Liz is asking too, is so many companies are focused on performance management, on the metrics, on the numbers, and where they are, whether for the week or for the month or for the year. But in between is kind of what I call, sort of a sandwich, if you will. We have the goals and the vision and what we start out with, and then we have the results and the metrics. But I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, like in between there's this, what I call the culture, and many companies say they have it or they're working on it, but the culture and that going from the goals and the vision to the performance metrics and all that, something is missing in the middle, and I think that's what creates a lot of employees' disengagement. Is that your perspective?
Yeah, I think organizations have difficulty understanding that results are important, but the process for achieving those results is actually more powerful. And by focusing on the process for achieving those results, you're actually going to have longer-term success. And there's a way to achieve what an organization needs to achieve, and it's going to be a far more healthy and positive work environment than another way. So culture becomes the way the employees are engaged in problem solving, and I talk a lot in the book about problem solving and what that really means, and how employees are looped into solving problems. So it starts with, first of all, wanting to surface problems, and then having a very active practice for solving problems.
And you really actually clarify for us, because there's a lot of semantics on problems, whether it's an opportunity or other ways to frame it, if you will. So clarifies, for our audience about problem resolution, finding the problem, how to really go about it.
Right. Thank you for asking that, because it is something that I chuckle. I've been chuckling about it, for many, many decades, on this whole notion of we don't want to talk about problems and sugarcoating it and calling it an opportunity for improvement. So to me, a problem, and actually not just me, the entire lean community defines a problem as a gap between where you are and where you like or need to be. So it could be a very urgent gap, something you have to fix. It may be where you have gotten to a certain level of performance and you simply want to raise the bar to beat the competition or to just deliver greater value to customers. In either case, it's a gap, and it's a measurable gap. And so that is a problem. And it can be a good thing, but it could be also a very urgent, very crisis-oriented problem.
So I really like what you said. It's looking at it from a perspective of, is to, just kind of letting it go. It is a problem. Let's just face it. It is a problem. Let's just be honest. But then not characterizing a problem as the most horrible thing in the world, right?
Right, because most problems are system generated and process generated. They're not people generated, and that's where it's interesting how our propensity is to blame people. Most leaders quickly look at who did it, and instead of it being viewed in a more kind of calm fashion as a systematic thing. Now, what happens when you take that approach is that you have to realize that you yourself are part of the system. So it's you being part of the problem and the solution, and that's a little different than blaming people and firing people, because of a problem. So it takes, again, back to psychology.
Right. No, I love that. Let me give Liz an opportunity before we close, maybe just a kind of a last question here on segment two.
Quickly, while you're talking about psychology, you talk about employee engagement being more important than employee satisfaction, which I absolutely agree with. But can you just briefly talk maybe about the difference between those two and then how they impact each other?
Yeah, thank you. That's also a great question. So to me, satisfaction is one of those things where the minute someone with a better benefit package or comp package comes along, someone is likely going to go. If someone's highly engaged in their work and they're being actively called into the problem-solving process and they're getting a chance to use their creative juices and solve problems on a daily basis, they're far less likely to be tempted by anything, because people really want to be satisfied deeply much more than they are caring about a paycheck. I mean, that's been proven over and over. So satisfaction is kind of the status quo, and engagement is a level above that keeps people happy and content, and if you want loyal employees, that's the way to get it.
That kind of reminds me, because I work in an industry that's very heavy customer service. Satisfaction is just an average. It doesn't win you in the competitive marketplace.
Right.
You have to go above that. So I can kind of relate to what you're saying there.
Do you guys talk about delighting the customer?
We are actually. It's part of our brand, but it has become kind of a cliche in many customer service industries where you delight and surprise. And I think
Right.
really taking it. I do write about it in my blog too, but that's part of the whole process of thinking. It is thinking outside the box, because you're going to do something not robotic, very genuine from your heart. It is an act of kindness to surprise and delight. And so it doesn't become, you raise a good point, there's a lot of cliches, including in many customer service companies. There's those cliche, delighting, wowing the customer, those kind of things. The ones that are very authentic, and I can point out to a company very respectable, is Ritz-Carlton. And
Yes.
Ritz-Carlton, it's very genuine. It doesn't become a cliche, and you can never expect it. That's why it's a surprise. So
Right.
I kind of relate to the whole delight discussion there.
Yeah, they've got delighting down at the Ritz.
Yes, they do. They do that very well. But Karen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We had a delightful moment with you, so I appreciate that very much.
Thank you very much for having me, Tal. It was really wonderful. And Liz, it was great to talk with you as well.
Thank you. You too.
Great. And I'm sorry, just one last thing is Karen mentioned where people can find you out there so they can look up some of your stuff.
Yeah, my website is ksmartin.com. I also finally just got karenmartin.com, so it points to that. And then we have free webinars every month. One is this Thursday, and so there's a webinar page that there's all kinds of free resources on the website. So ksmartin.com.
Great, and I can testify to that. She does have great webinars. I've been actually watching some of those. They're great material. They kind of goes along with the book as well. So if you want to dive in more into those 4 areas that we talked about, she does have webinars for each one, and they're very valuable. So great.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for the audience. You guys can view that on our Lead with Giants community, and we'll post them later on this evening and then throughout the week. And this is great material for the emerging developing leader, so we look forward to seeing you. Thank you.